came to be. Once upon a time, in a land far away, a sheriff broke into the home of a Mr. Semaine. It was 1604, and the British judge told the king that what the sheriff had done was a no-no. The court's opinion declared, "The house of everyone is to him as his castle, as well for his defense against injury and violence as for his repose." More commonly repeated as, "An Englishman's home is his castle." In a later case, Entic, the British court examined the details of a search warrant and declared it invalid as overly broad because it authorized the taking of all of Entic's papers, not just those involving criminality. Moreover, it said the warrant lacked probable cause for any search. Now, those principles found their way into our Fourth Amendment. It provides the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Clearly, early British law and our Fourth Amendment contemplate our right to a zone of privacy. It is not an absolute right, but it can be breached by the government only if the search is reasonable, if it's supported by probable cause to believe that we have engaged in wrongdoing, and that what is being sought can be particularly described. So what was the problem? Well, before we had a constitution, the king considered colonists to be tax-paying British citizens. His tax officials sent to collect from American merchants what British law said they owed, wanted to be able to look in all homes and businesses for smuggled goods, which would have been prohibited. So to legalize these searches, the English Parliament authorized the use of writs of assistance. Assistance in the sense of a sheriff accompanying a customs official when the search was conducted. The net effect of this was to eliminate the need for a search warrant, thus making the writ of assistance a general search warrant. These general search warrants authorized the British to search whomever they wished, wherever they wished, whenever they wished, for whatever they wished, with or without any reasonable basis for suspicion. No specific search warrant, no identified person or place, no oath or affirmation of the probable cause. Are you beginning to connect the dots? This is important, folks. You see, the NSA's surveillance of the American people today is the electronic equivalent of one of the grievances that drove our founding fathers to the revolution we commemorate every July 4th. Those British general search warrants. The NSA is engaged in the unreasonable search of all of us without even a suspicion we have done anything wrong, let alone probable cause, without specifying where they will look or what they are looking for. And so it is that 224 years later, an ever-increasing number of American citizens, now nearly 50%, again believe that government surveillance has gone too far, notwithstanding the professed concern and threats of terrorism. It has proven very difficult for the public, the media, even our elected officials, as Glenn Greenwald revealed this morning in The Guardian, to find out basic facts about NSA surveillance. As New Mexico Senator Tom Udall has observed, it is very, very difficult, I think, to have a transparent debate about secret programs approved by secret court, issuing secret court orders based on secret interpretations of the law. And our task has been made even more difficult by intelligence officials' willingness to flat out lie. When asked by Senator Ron Wyden whether the government was collecting the metadata from citizens' phone calls, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, replied simply, no. Others, with scarcely more subtlety, speak in terms deliberately nuanced to deceive the public and media. Measured by any rational benefit cost analysis, what the government is doing to American citizens in the name of protecting us from terrorism is wildly overreaching. Since 9/11, the overwhelming percentage of deaths from terrorists has been inflicted on our uninvited military personnel in foreign countries, where our presence has both increased recruitment of terrorists abroad while saving terrorists the cost of airline fare to America. Our intelligence services spokesperson are asked to identify instances in which surveillance of Americans was the sole contributor to preventing violence. They struggle. They dissemble. They mention something between 1 and 13 possible instances for which they refuse to provide details. Moreover, the programs aren't always effective. Alerted to the Boston bombers, they failed to connect the dots. Even if you don't care about personal privacy, consider the money and personnel devoted to surveillance of American citizens. Those costs are clearly grossly disproportionate to any benefits, especially when compared with other programs. If the government was truly concerned about the preventable deaths of Americans, the trillions spent fighting wars abroad and conducting surveillance at home could have saved far more lives if spent on other programs. There are over 400,000 deaths a year related to smoking, 32,000 from automobile accidents, 30,000 gun deaths. Americans are 271 times more likely to die from workplace accidents than terrorist attacks. Preventable injury, disease, illness, and death include such factors as obesity, lack of exercise, poor nutrition, alcohol, and other drug use, and the failure to use motorcycle helmets and seatbelts. Adequate funding of best practices public health programs could save far more lives than surveillance ever will. We will never totally eliminate those deaths, nor will we totally eliminate all terrorist attacks, no matter how much surveillance we have, whether carried out by American citizens, such as Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma City, or unsuccessfully attempted by Najib Zazi against the New York City subway. Given the grossly disproportionate and ineffective expenditure on surveillance, rationalized as a life-saving effort, one need not be paranoid to wonder what the government's real motives might be for spying on us. It may be true there is high global risk this weekend of a massive Al-Qaeda attack, but it's not unreasonable to wonder if the warnings are also efforts to support NSA surveillance. Wolfgang Schmidt, a one-time lieutenant colonel in the former East German secret police and spy agency Stasi, has said of our NSA, "You know, for us, this would have been a dream come true. So much information, so many people. The Stasi's wiretapping ability went from one wiretap to 40 at a time. Compare Stasi's efforts with those of the NSA. The NSA has gone from a constitutional, specific search warrant for one person to the electronic equivalent of the old British general search warrant. Because the NSA has the technology that makes it possible, it wants to be able to search every American simultaneously and retain what they find. The government tries to reassure us everything it is doing is legal. That's not so clear. President Obama is both relying on a legal opinion interpreting the Patriot Act, but one so secret he can't tell us what it says, and, according to this morning's Guardian, refusing to permit the FISA court's release of an opinion finding some NSA surveillance unconstitutional, which the court is willing to release. Moreover, many who voted for the act believe they did not authorize what the NSA is doing. Also from Glenn Greenwald's report in this morning's Guardian. But assume it is legal. Let's assume that what they're doing is legal. The act was passed by Congress. As I sometimes say of corporate abuses, the problem is not so much that corporations violate the law as it is that they write the law. The issue is not whether the law was passed by Congress. The issue is whether it and what is done in its name is constitutional. And let's assume it's constitutional. We're still left with the question of, is it right? Is it moral? Is it how we want to live? As Dr. Martin Luther King has reminded us, quote, we should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was, quote, legal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Presumably, what Stasi did was also legal. Consider for a moment the potential for abuse from citizen surveillance justified as an anti-terrorism program. President Nixon authorized the burglary of Democratic National Committee headquarters. Okay? That thing is possible. That's been done. Can you imagine the value to a presidential political campaign of access to the phone calls and emails of your opponent? When this kind of surveillance was called echelon 10 or 15 years ago, Europeans complained that NSA was doing industrial espionage for American corporations that resulted in Airbus losing contracts to Boeing. Third, what if, as the New York Times reports this morning, I do read other papers than the Guardian, terrorist surveillance reveals a planned crime by non-terrorists. Okay, so they're looking for terrorists. They find a crime is about to be committed, as in the fictional TV show Person of Interest. How can the constitutional rights of the discovered potential criminal be protected? Fourth, how can natural curiosity be eliminated? Remember when UI hospital personnel, curious as to the condition of Hawkeye football players with rhabdo, took an unauthorized peek at their medical records? Or finally, are they telling us there will never be an instance of someone helping a friend going through a bitter divorce by checking out their spouse's email or bank records? So, what should we do? I too have a list. 1, citizens must take a stand. The first thing we need to do is what you've already done by showing up today, following in the footsteps of America's colonists in the 1770s. When the people will lead, their leaders will follow, especially with a cautious Congress as election-focused and dysfunctional as ours. You and I are going to have to step up and take the lead on this one. 2, legislators, judges, and lawyers must refashion our law of privacy. We have 2 related problems. 1, in a world of ubiquitous surveillance, video cameras, mail covers, collection of phone metadata, and comparable intrusions on privacy. Does a reasonable expectation of privacy, that's our current legal standard, provide any protection? 2, the courts have said that when you give information to a third party, such as a bank or phone company or internet service provider, you thereby lose any expectation of privacy. This is the legal argument of the businesses that are collecting information about our lives and the government agencies that then retrieve it from them. Information that would not be constitutionally available to the government without the company's participation. It is my opinion that both problems, this ubiquitous surveillance and third-party transactions, require rethinking in this high-tech age. If you give your private information to a newspaper or television reporter who makes no promises, you can't complain when it appears in the paper or on television. On the other hand, we do protect the privacy of the information you give to your doctor or lawyer or cleric. Today there needs to be a third category. Credit card data may not be entitled to the protection of medical records, but it deserves more than what you give to a newspaper reporter. It is reasonable to demand a level of trust in business relationships. A level of trust in relationships that are necessities in our economy, such as banking and phones. We are not gratuitously handing them private information. We must do so in order to have their service. It is given to them for specific and limited purpose. Certainly the government should not be entitled to corporate records that would have violated customers' constitutional rights if taken directly from the person whose records they are. 3, government surveillance of American citizens should be conducted in accord with the requirements of the Fourth Amendment. One would hope you wouldn't have to even mention that on an occasion such as this, but it's now in contention. Could the government find more potential terrorists if its computers constantly monitored the phone conversations of 300 million Americans? Probably. It could find even more if FBI agents could conduct unannounced searches of 100 million American residents whenever they chose. But as the Fourth Amendment's history reveals, it is a specific response to the general search warrants of its time that take the form of NSA surveillance today. To paraphrase the old saying about gravity, protection from unreasonable government surveillance is not just a good idea, it's the law. In this case, constitutional law. Does protecting our rights to privacy mean that some criminals and terrorists will be more difficult to catch? Yes, that's the trade-off. But it's a trade-off our nation's founders made for us and considered a more than reasonable price to pay for our rights to privacy. 4th, we need a procedure to protect whistleblowers dealing with classified information. Whether you consider Edward Snowden a hero or a traitor, the fact is that he has enabled a national deliberation even the president acknowledged is necessary. What has followed in the form of media investigations, reporting, and opinion pieces, congressional hearings, and legislation, and modestly more NSA transparency, has created a better informed public. We have laws protecting whistleblowers from retribution for revelations of conventional government wrongdoing, revelations of wrongdoing in secret, classified programs, possibly unconstitutional, are, if anything, even more necessary and valuable in a democratic society than revelations of garden variety, unclassified mischief. Of course, we can't let everyone with a top secret clearance reveal whatever classified information they choose. But we can provide them more alternatives than one, ongoing complicity in classified programs they believe to be unconstitutional, or two, leaving the country because they're confronting the risk of life imprisonment after being charged with espionage or the treason of, quote, aiding the enemy. There are many possibilities. One would be to permit whistleblowers confidential revelations of concerns to any member of Congress of their choosing. There are many other possibilities. Bottom line, you and I have much work to do, starting with our standing together here today in Iowa City, and I thank you for this opportunity to participate in your event.